TF2 is no stranger to many game modes. From core game modes you play on a session-to-session basis, to more obscure things you might have never even heard of or played. But today, I'd like to focus on one of the core game modes, that being Payload. Payload is in general the golden way to play TF2 casually. I mean, you've got a simple objective and it's very easy to wrap your head around. However, there are some glaring issues with this game mode that not many people really seem to care about, and these problems eventually trickle down to some class-specific issues. More specifically, unlockable weapons and how classes can abuse them. To understand what I'm about to break down, let us first understand the payload card, and what benefits we can obtain from it. The payload card acts as a level 1 dispenser, providing us with 10 health per second, 20% of our ammo per second, 40 metal every 5 seconds, and as the spy, 5% cloak per second. Now, to understand why this is a little busted given the right position, is to understand that dispensers have a limit on how many resources they can hold. Anyways, this allows for some classes to take a heavy advantage of the payload card. Any class can now negate any ammo loss as long as they remain on the payload card, or negate any chip damage done, and as previously mentioned, unlockable weapons can abuse this. The engineer, for example, they have a secondary called the short circuit that can launch these energy orbs which delete all projectiles it comes across. This in itself isn't a problem because the way the engineer fires it is by using 65 metal with alt fire. However, when we introduce the payload to the mix, the engineer can easily just sit on the payload and delete all incoming projectiles at practically no cost except time. Kind of like what you can do with the scorch shot, just specific to this situation. And when the two classes that thrive the most on payload defense, being Demo Man and Soldier, can be negated by some engineer who's just spamming right click on the card firing these orbs, I think it's safe to say that this is an example of an abusable unlock. It's kind of like how vaccinator medics can negate damage with little effort to build an Uber, except just less so here due to the two classes it restricts, for the most part anyways. I suppose this could also apply to the Widowmaker as it's similar in concept, but I don't think it'd benefit too greatly. However, the payload problem doesn't end there. With Heavy, we can abuse yet another weapon unlock, this one being the Hulung Heater. You wouldn't think this weapon would be classified as a problem for the payload card just by looking at its stats, but when put into action, this thing shreds on payload with a competent enough Heavy. The real problem with this thing is that one of the downsides might as well not exist on the payload card, the stat in question being consumes an additional 4 ammo per second while spun up stat. This of course is a problem because the payload gives us an infinite supply of ammo, and we can stay spun up as long as we'd like. This also makes Spy's life descend further into the 7 circles of hell, as the ring of fire you could theoretically infinitely have around the payload makes it nearly impossible for average Spy players to get stabs. That's about it for this weapon though. I personally wouldn't consider this too much of an issue due to the existence of better Spy. It doesn't take away from the fact that it is a problem though. Speaking of Heavy, you can also stack Heavies on offense and have them all sit their fat asses on cart for what can sometimes be an easy steamroll in pubs. Due to the nature of the payload not distributing the benefits of it equally and rather just giving everyone on it the same 10 HP per second, makes it an issue with people being able to focus down one person and get the kill when there are a lot of people in the payload. And also due to the slow pacing nature of payload, it allows Heavy to advance very easily with the team. Anyhow, that's enough of Heavy. Do any other classes benefit from the payload this much? No, actually. There isn't many more benefits to payload offense, but when we switch over to defense, there's another issue we should acknowledge, that being stacking of engineers. In payload, as I previously mentioned, the progress is relatively slow, and this allows engineer to set up sentries with ease. Now this in itself isn't a problem, but when we stack 3 to 5 engineers on a single checkpoint, it gets really annoying and convoluted to push through with offense without an Uber. Which again, in itself isn't a problem, but when pub teams almost always have no medics, it gets really difficult. And even if you're able to build a stock Uber and try to make a push, the knockback from 4 sentries is a nightmare to deal with, even when you're invincible. I think, however, that's the only problem with defense. And that about wraps up the payload problem. While these roadblocks can sometimes be annoying to deal with, there's always a requeue button that's just 4 clicks away. Anyways, that's the video. I know this one wasn't too long, but I hope I still entertained you, as that's all I needed to do to make this video worth it. With that being said, please subscribe. As a starting TF2ber, I need to gain some momentum and any little bit helps. It would also be appreciated if you could like and maybe even donate items to me using the Steam trade link I have in the description. Anyhow, I hope to see you next time and thank you so much for watching.